Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. Welcome to another episode of Context. Today on the program, we continue to look at strained relations between Azerbaijan and Russia. Once regarded as a pragmatic, if not warm relationship, Azerbaijan and Russia now appear to be drifting apart. This week, a series of events has brought underlying tensions into full view. From the deaths of ethnic Azerbaijanis in Russian custody to the crash of an Azerbaijani passenger jet that Baku blames on Moscow, and with regional power dynamics shifting fast, Russia's traditional dominance in the South Caucasus is being tested. To add to that, Azerbaijan's deepening ties with Turkey, and the picture becomes more than just a bilateral rift, it's a signal of broader realignment. And today we ask what lies at the root of these latest escalations, and are we seeing the slow unravelling of Moscow's grip on the Caucasus? Joining us today is political analyst Diogo Castro Silva from Lisbon, Portugal, and independent researcher Shujat Ahmadzadeh from Baku, Azerbaijan. Gentlemen, welcome to the programme.
Hi there.
Now, I'll start with you, Shujat. How would you describe the current state of Azerbaijan-Russia relations? Strained, fractured, or beyond repair?
Well, we have to understand that speak of Russia, or perhaps any other country, there is no monolithic voice that is coming from the one capital. So in itself, one Russia is practically main Russias for Azerbaijan. So one is neighbor, the other one is hegemon. In the past, there was also a mediator Russia that was trying to mediate between Armenia and Azerbaijan. This is no longer the case, but hegemon and neighbor still is out there. Overall, in the past 35 years, Azerbaijan's foreign policy has been based on the very simple premise of navigating these two Russias. Actually, it was three Russias, but not after 2023. It is two Russias navigating between the two. And we did indeed had certain episodical occurrences in which one Russia weighted more than the other one. So obviously Azerbaijan wants to have rather pragmatic relationship with neighboring Russia because it shares a lot of transnational and trans-border concerns that concern the North Caucasus, that concerns economic matters, that concerns connectivity matters. But when it comes to hegemon Russia, I think the Azerbaijan's key foreign policy tenet has always been to have multi-alignment along with non-alignment in order to balance possible pressure from the Russian side to establish full hegemony over the South Caucasus space. On this regard, Azerbaijani-Turkish partnership has proven to be useful, but we always, the first time we had also in the past, this episodes in which there was a resist back in Moscow by different groups. And I think I would also conceptualize this most recent, let's put it that way, escalation. And not only because of, obviously triggering was plane crash and then later on the ethnic Azerbaijanis in Yekaterinburg and other cities, but overall it is also larger institutional resistance coming from Moscow, especially how post-Soviet space is evolving and transforming into a new geopolitical unit.
Okay. All right. Shujat, thank you for that. Now, Diogo, do you see a pattern of Moscow losing leverage across the post-Soviet space, including here in the South Caucasus?
Yes, indeed. But let me put a wider lens and build up on what your previous, my co-guest just said. If you take a wider lens, I'm probably pretty sure that in some decades' time, historians will look at the period after the fall of the Soviet Union up to now as the wars of the dissolution of the Soviet Empire. Because you had the eruption of several conflicts started within the Caucasus with Chechnya war, then Georgia, then obviously Ukraine. But you have a situation of instability. And after especially the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine, we entered in an accelerating phase where the position of Russia, on one hand, where the relation that Russia wanted to have with previous republics of the Soviet Union is put into question. Furthermore, in the region of the Caucasus, you have also a shifting change, which is the position, because the Caucasus traditionally was always the confluence between Russia, Turkey, Turkey and Iran and the Persian Empire. So now you are having also changes in the Middle East that will reflect also in the Caucasus. So you are having a lot of changes. And after the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and the incapability of Russia to subject Ukraine to occupation, the leverage that Russia once had, the soft power, if you want, is greatly put into question. And now we are entering this phase where it's a much more fluid situation, and where relations will have to achieve a new equilibrium.
Okay. Shudat, I want to talk about the recent incident with the Azarbjani Airlines. What has been the government's response, the Azerbaijani government's response to the deaths of its ethnic citizens in Russian custody, and how has it played with the public?
So obviously, you know, if you mean the recent arrest of
I do. Sorry,
Azerbaijani diaspora.
I will come back to the airlines question afterwards. This is actually about the Azerbaijanis in custody. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So there have been some occasions that Azerbaijani diaspora leaders have been arrested, have been released. So also some investigation has been opened into certain businessmen of Azerbaijani origin. Legally, most of them, if not all, so I don't know the peculiarities, but all of them are Russian. I don't know if they are Azerbaijani citizens, legally speaking, which concerns the extent to which the state of Azerbaijan could be involved legally in protecting its citizens abroad. But on the other side, which is the other side of the coin, which is far more important than the legal part, is how this plays out in terms of the fact that there is a considerable amount of Azerbaijanis out there, and some sources estimate them to be 2 and 3 million people, which definitely is not something that could be only to a legal topic of person XYZ is my citizen or not, meaning that I should protect or not, but rather a very vibrant community that has ties, connections with their the kin state, Azerbaijan, the Republic of Azerbaijan, and many of them also do share Azerbaijani passports. In itself, it's a warning, a triggering sign, and to be honest, it is one of the things that has in the past also been when Azerbaijan and Russians Azerbaijan-Russian relations got deteriorated, specifically in 2014 and 2013. This is very unfortunate, and this is not new. So we had on many occasions, specifically Georgian and Ukrainian diaspora also getting targeted when there was a deterioration of relations of Russia with Georgia and Ukraine respectively. I hope it doesn't go there, but this is in itself a very concerning kind of red flag, let's put it that way.
Okay. Diogo, how does Russia interpret Azerbaijan's growing assertiveness, especially post-Karabakh?
Well, I just wanted to add one previous point to your previous question, which is the complex relation inside of Russia with nationalities, especially coming from the Caucasus. I think we need to see this, how some nationalities are represented in the Russian army, casualties, situations where the internal relation of Russian authorities with other nationalities inside of Russia is not very stable. Let me put it that way. I would say, returning now to your question,
Yes.
I would say that the situation in Karabakh between Azerbaijan and Armenia and the assertiveness of Azerbaijan in this regard recently is a show of the loss of leverage of Russia, because Russia was the interposing force and it couldn't intervene, it didn't want to intervene, which was definitely a show of lack of leverage, lack of capability, which is not surprising given how draining is the Ukraine effort. And that's what I mentioned before, which is once you don't have any more, or you have diminished your soft power and influence, you only have the hard power, and the hard power is a very limited tool if you want to project political leverage. It is a component, but alone it rapidly becomes too dispersed, especially if you are dealing with several conflicts in the same region. So that is precisely the show, or the lack of leverage we were mentioning before.
Okay. And Shujat, is there a sense in Azerbaijan that Moscow is using intimidation tactics, or is it seen as a deeper systemic hostility?
Yes, it is. I think it would rather fall into the first category of how you would describe. Yes, certainly intimidation. Intimidation, because I don't think that at this point we have reached the point. I mean, hopefully we'll never reach, but we have reached the point when burning bridge is desired outcome, especially in Moscow. So definitely it is more of intimidation, and intimidation happens when you want to have some bargaining at the very end. What this bargaining is about, what it concerns, what it doesn't, I don't personally know, but certain intimidation tactic which is using already existing well-known playbook that includes diaspora, that includes import bans, that includes some other hybrid mechanisms of intimidation, in itself demonstrates that at the end there is a bit of there is a quote-unquote elephant in the room that needs to be negotiated, and that wants to be taken. But what is it? I'm quite unaware of.
Okay. Now, Diego, with Russia increasingly sidelined, is there room for NATO or the EU to increase security cooperation with Azerbaijan under the guise of energy security?
Well, I'm sure there is an opening for that. Europe, as you might understand at this point, has the plate full of the aftermath with the NATO summit, the decisions that need to be taken in the light of what apparently are, again, suspensions of US aid. But on the long term, EU has been looking at the Caucasus very attentively, and of course one angle is of course the energy. Turkey also, as a NATO member, has gained a lot of regional, increased its regional leverage given the events unfolding in Syria and everything. So yes, you can see both the EU and NATO with a different interest in the region of the South Caucasus, and going forward as the draining, like I said, the draining of resources, because the full-fledged invasion of Ukraine is a strategic disaster for Russia. Whatever the outcome it arrives, it greatly weakened Russia vis-a-vis China, and it greatly weakened Russian economy and Russian capability, and of course the links to the West. So the more this void is created, the more there is space for other powers to link with the South Caucasus, be it the European Union, be it even China, be it other countries, because clearly there is a strategic training in terms of the Russian capability. However, let me say, Russia still is, of course, a paramount country in the region with a lot of hard power, but that hard power alone cannot sustain a long-term strategic presence.
Okay. And Shujat, how does Russia view the organization of Turkic states, and is Moscow increasingly alarmed by Turkic integration?
In itself, there are two things. So, in a short term, perhaps there is very few reason to be alarmed, largely because absolute majority of Turkic state members, including Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and potentially, even though it's observer, but Turkmenistan still not a member, but let's focus on are members of also Eurasian Economic Union, which is a Russia-led economic space, and also CSTO, that is Russia-led Security Alliance, which means that technically they are not realigned against Russia by becoming members of states. But on the other hand, there is a sense of alarm, which we could see through informal and some media, I would say, discourses portrayed in the Russian media, largely because Organization of Turkic States in itself, integration of Central Asia with the Caucasus and Turkey in itself is becoming more and more preferred geopolitical alliance for Central Asian and South Caucasian states in the wake of increased multipolarity and West and Russia, especially after the Ukraine war in 2022. So you have two camps, established camps, and they are in cold war with each other. Perhaps one even would argue that there is a hot phase of the war. And Central Asian states specifically don't want to be part of this, don't want to be the ones suffering from the collateral damage of this rivalry and the conflict. So they are becoming more and more focusing on the geopolitical identity making of this organization of Turkic states, which in itself also endangers Russian presence in the Central Asia.
Okay, and Diego, do these developments reframe the South Caucasus as a front line of energy competition, not just between Azerbaijan and Russia, but between East and West?
Well, indeed, Caucasus is going to become, as it historically always was, a key point, a key junction of geography. Like I said before, the frontier of three empires and a crucial area linking the East and the West. And I think as we go forward, this importance will only grow. The energy is, of course, one of the major themes. Security will be also. So you will have trade, because like I said, the Caucasus is also in the middle of this huge East and West link. So yes, it will make the Caucasus globally more important. And especially, there is a great question mark, and looking ahead is what will happen to Russia post-Ukraine, what will happen to the Putin's regime, because Putin, no matter what, will not be here forever. He's getting old, so there will be at some point also a change of regime in Russia. So there are a lot of question marks and a lot of potential for changes in the region and around the region.
Okay, and Shujat, could Turkey and Azerbaijan push for accelerated regional connectivity projects like the Zangezur corridor as a buffer against Russian influence?
Well, yes, there is overlapping of interests. Interestingly and ironically, not only between Azerbaijan and Turkey, but also between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey. That is, neither of the three countries want to have increased Russian presence, especially over the connectivity routes in the South Caucasus, which perhaps one of the reasons why this trilateral commission between Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Russia has not been functioning ever since 2022, 2023. In itself a demonstration that neither Armenia nor Azerbaijan wants to have this commission practically working, which in itself creates another space for a completely new connectivity modality to emerge that would bypass Russia. There are some indications in media, I don't know whether they're verifiably true or not, that this modality is somehow almost approved by those in Yerevan, Baku, and in Ankara. But we'll see whether this becomes a reality or not. But it seems that there is strategically not only Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Turkey, but also Armenia are aligned with the vision of connectivity routes in the Caucasus not being monitored or dominated by Russia. A new sort of a vision in which Russia and Iran is bypassed.
Okay. And now, Diego, what does all this mean for the future of Russian influence in the region? Is it retrenchment or repositioning? What's your analysis?
Well, it a lot depends on what will happen with Russia. I believe Russia will be at the crossroads. Either it wants to be a normal nation state, or it wants to recreate something of an empire. It had that choice back in the 90s, whether to pursue, for example, the Second Chechen War or not. And we know what was that decision. That decision at the time in '99 was to recreate some kind of an imperial influence. Russia will have, at a certain point, going to be subject to the same decision again, whether it will want to be a normal nation state or try again to recreate something of an empire. The thing is, down the line, the conditions are very different from the 90s. Demographically, Russia is weaker. Economically, in a sense, a lot of the potential has been spent. So there will be an opportunity to reframe Russian relations, not only with the Caucasus, hopefully, but with the different other parts of the old Soviet Union, because the question is, what is the destiny that Russia wants to embrace? A normal nation, or this kind of neo-imperial ambition? That will be a lot, that will be in play, I would say, in kind of the medium term. This decision will be on Russia's lap. And a lot of what your question, I believe, will be much more better answered than right now.
Okay. Diogo, thank you so much for joining the program. Thank you for your insight. And Shujat, also thank you to you for joining us today. I appreciate your contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now that's all we have for this edition of Context. Until next time, thanks for watching.